making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK.
Howdy how, folks. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing pretty well. It's been cold here recently, thus the hat, and yeah, it's been a pretty good couple of days. Hey, welcome, Scott. Glad to have you here today. So on today's menu, as you can see, if you hit !menu, it will tell you what it is that I'm making today. And then if you hit !recipe, it will point you to the Discord where I've posted the recipe for what I'm making today. So then that way you can follow along. And if you want to make it, then there's the recipe for you. So yeah, it is, what we're making is tteokbokki. And in terms of like how it's spelled in the English language, it varies. I've seen it spelled like with like a couple of D's and some other things, just because the sounds don't 100% translate between Korean and English. But tteokbokki is about as close as I can get. I don't speak Korean, unfortunately, but I do enjoy the food. So tteokbokki is it's a rice cake, and it comes in two basic forms. One of them being this little kind of white cylinder, and you get them usually in the refrigerator to the freezer section at the market. And so, but it also comes in these little coin shapes, and the coin shaped ones are most often used in a soup that's made on New Year's Day, and it's supposed to be like coins and represent good fortune for the coming year. And so generally speaking, that's what those particular forms get used for. But thankfully they freeze really well, and like I said, since they're in the freezer section most of the time, all you got to do is pull them out, thaw them. And if you read through the recipe, I talk about how you really should soak them first, and so I've actually got a package of them soaking right now, so then that way we're not having to sit here for 20 minutes or so waiting for them to kind of soften up a bit, because unless you're buying them fresh, which I have yet to find fresh ones, they can be pretty hard, and the texture that we want for this is going to be quite soft. The tteokbokki that you find on the streets in Korea, it's probably their single most popular street food that's around. And there's lots of videos on YouTube that show stalls that sell this, and they usually have really big pans that are probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet by about 3 feet, maybe about 6 or so inches deep, and they just have big vats of this stuff going, and then they just kind of add more stuff as the night goes on and as they sell through things. And so it's super common, and it's super beloved. And so we're gonna make a slightly souped up version that's got a couple of additional ingredients in it, just so then that way it's a good time to eat. But I'll point all of that stuff out once we actually get to it. One of the things that we need to make for this is some soft-boiled eggs, and so I want to do that kind of to begin with, so we have time to prep some of the other ingredients that we need to get going that are going to go into the soup and everything. And I will try and point out some of the specialized ingredients that we're going to need. So besides those tteokbokki, which this is what you will, not necessarily this brand, but this is kind of what it looks like, and it comes usually in like a 500 gram bag. Sometimes you'll find like full kilos and more, just that's just kind of how they are in the market. One of the other ingredients that goes into it, and it's not 100% necessary, but it is used all the time, it's called, I'm gonna mess this up, tteomokki, or it's a fish cake. And in this case, The form that I have it in is these sheets, and it comes in little packets that you can buy in the freezer section, and you'll see them in kind of this shape, but you also see them in like tubes and all sorts of other ways that it's available. But for this, we want kind of these little sheets, and we're going to use 3 of them. And to kind of do a little bit of ahead of time prep on this, ran them under some hot water, because generally when you get them out of the package, there's a little bit of residual oil from frying, and we want to get rid of that. So by running them under the water, it just gives us an opportunity to kind of get rid of that, so we're not, you know, having any additional oil or fat in there. The other kind of, I guess, really sort of specialized, well, one of the couple, is Gochujang. This is a Korean pepper paste that is used in just about everything. And you can find smaller containers of it. This is actually probably about the second smallest. The smaller ones are usually about half this size, but this, I think, is yeah, this is like a kilo. And they'll sell like 500 gram packages, but then they also have really large tubs because it gets used all the time in Korean cuisine. And then the other thing we're going to use is this is labeled as red pepper powder, but this is actually the gochujang, the Korean red pepper. Yeah, this happens to be finely ground. If all you can find is the sort of regular medium sized, which, yeah. So finding it in the coarse is pretty common, since it's used in just about everything. If all you can find is the coarse, all you need to do is grind it up, and that'll be just fine. I think other than that, everything else that's on the ingredient list is pretty standard. Let me have a look, because I have it up here to reference. Oh, one other, in the seasoning paste part of the recipe, lists either corn syrup or oligodang, which is, you see it as like a potato-based or a rice-based syrup, and it's a really common ingredient that gets added. But if you don't have it, it's just fine, or if you don't want to use corn syrup, it's fine. I believe in the recipe, I actually have it listed as adding some additional sugar. I think like another half tablespoon over regular sugar, because this stuff doesn't tend to be as sweet as normal sugar, but it is something that is super common in Korean cuisine. So we've got that going on. And let's see, I think that about does it. So that being the case, I've got a pot of water on the stove at a boil already, so then that way, as we're doing the eggs, we can chop up and kind of prep some of the rest of the ingredients, and then we can get to work on assembling everything. So let me go get that pot, and we'll have that right there. There we go. So for these soft-boiled eggs, we're going to do them for 6.5 minutes. And the methodology that we're going to employ is we've already, because when it comes to doing eggs for, like for ramen or like this, for instance, there's 2 really popular methods of making them. Hey, baby. Hey. Mrs. Huesa was at lunch with a friend, and so she actually just got back. Okay, thank you, babe. You can start them off in cold water, but it becomes a little bit more difficult to judge the time, especially if you're going for a very specific consistency of the yolk. Or you can do the hot water method, which is what I'm going to be doing, which, since the water's already at temp, I'm going to drop a pair of eggs into the water, and then we're going to time it for 6.5 minutes. Pull them out. I've got a bowl of cold water, and then I'm going to take it over to the sink and let it run a little bit. We just want to cool down the eggs initially so then we can peel them. And I will do that in the water to help facilitate the easy removal of the shell. Now, full disclosure, when it comes to making hard-boiled eggs, we haven't had the greatest of luck of getting nice, clean, beautiful eggs. There are... there's any number of things online that talk about, oh, you can do this or you can add this and different methodologies. The one thing that's kind of consistent is the fact that the eggs, in theory, should be a bit older. That, like, if you've had them for at least a week or two, the older ones, just because of the interior structure of the egg, they tend to separate from the shell better if they're a little bit older. If they're too fresh, they just are not a fan of being shelled. So I'm going to turn this down a bit because I don't want a super hard boil. Okay, so I'm going to grab the eggs and probably should have inspected these ahead of time just to make sure that there weren't any cracks in them, because the last thing I want is to have them kind of explode in the water. So we'll go ahead and drop these in, and then it's considered sort of best practice to kind of swirl them around a little bit, at least in the beginning, to help center the yolks in them, especially if you're going to be cutting them open for ramen, and so you kind of want that centered yolk. It's a better presentation. All right, so we've got 6.5 minutes on the clock there, just enough time for us to prep the vegetation for what we need. And on team vegetation, we've got 8 ounces of green cabbage. We're just doing regular old green cabbage, nothing special about that. And I weighed this, and it's about 2 pounds, so we'll do about 1/4 of it. And all we're going to do is cut it into kind of 2-inch pieces, slightly larger, so then that way it's a little bit easier to grab and eat. And just trim off the little bottom part, and we'll take out the core. That being the case, I will go ahead and kind of slice it right there, and then okay, so that's ready to go. 1/4 of an onion, which we're just gonna kind of slice into thinner pieces. If I can go long ways, this is kind of my preferred way to do it.
Sleepy Dragon just showed up.
Oh, hey, Sleepy Dragon, how's it going?
Does Scott talk about his parents having a piercer?
A piercer?
An egg piercer. Do you for boiling eggs?
Yes, I've seen those, and I know that they're really commonly used in a number of ramen restaurants. I do not have one, and I've not used one, so I can't say, oh, thank you for the hat compliment. So I can't really speak to how well they work, but one of the best ramen chefs in the country, Keizo Shimamoto, out of Ramen Shack down in San Juan Capistrano, he uses them, and the guy knows what he's talking about. So you know what? If it's good enough for him, it works for me. Scallions. I listed 4. I am a fan of scallions in this, so I just kind of cleaned up a bunch that I had, and so I'm just going to use them. Now, normally in Korea, you would be using daepa, the large kind of green onions that are native to there. I don't happen to have any at the moment, so this is what I got. This is what I'm using, and it's most accessible for most people. Okay, let's see. The fish cake. Need to cut that up into a couple of pieces. That's just strips like that. If, say for instance, you wanted to go the vegetarian route or even the vegan route, you can omit this no problem. I would use kind of the deep fried tofu packets. They're little pouches. I would use those instead. You could even, like, instead of the eggs, you could even use the kind of the super silken tofu that they use for sundubu jjigae. That would work really nicely with this too. So, okay, we got our scallions, we got our cabbage, we got our onion, we're doing the eggs. Now we just need to mix up the sauce, or the seasoning paste. So for that, we're gonna need, let's see, about a tablespoon of the red pepper powder. Okay. Okay. A little bit of the gochujang. I said use a tablespoon. This happens to be relatively spicy red pepper paste. If you want it less spicy, you can certainly reduce the amount. I will say that the gochujang, because of the way it's made, it has like some rice flour in it that has a tendency to kind of thicken up things. So if you want it really thick, use more. If you want it less thick, you can either omit it or just go with the straight pepper powder. But you want kind of this bright red color. That's how it looks. That's how it's really kind of supposed to be. Okay, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And of course I'm grabbing the Korean soy sauce. I'm using Sempio 701. Sempio 501 is probably the 501 and 701 are probably the most popular soy sauces in Korea. So I would recommend, if you can find them, use them. And before I drop liquid in there, because I got to measure out a couple of solids, let's add, what is it? Oh, those are our eggs. All right. Okay, let's get these under the faucet real quick. Okay. Okay. So those, we want to give them about 2 minutes under the water. And since we are done with that pot, I will go ahead and remove it. Okay, So on the salt front, half a teaspoon. And there's a little bit of pepper that goes in there. There we go. Need some sugar, which is what, a tablespoon, I think. And let's see. Got it. Need the soy sauce. We need the oligodang and the garlic. Okay, so the oligodang. Drop. Okay, that's about a tablespoon. What is what? It's the oligodang. It is a rice-based sweetener that gets added to a lot of stuff. Couple tablespoons of the soy sauce. Okay. Okay. Put that back down. Now we get to see how good or bad my egg peeling skills are. So, alright. So we'll give these a wrap. And then start at the kind of fat end where the air pocket is.
Hey, no judgment. All God's children. It's fine.
So far, so good. I'm like holding my breath a little bit. Because for whatever reason, like I said, both Mrs. Weso and myself, we've just had kind of the worst luck when it comes to peeling hard-boiled eggs. They just come out looking ragged and awful. I mean, they taste just fine, but they're kind of ugly to look at. So far, these are coming along really nicely. Just got to make sure not to get too cocky. That's a good looking egg. Look at that. That's kind of a proud moment for me, to be honest.
Thanks.
And all I'm doing is I'm just kind of cracking it from the fat side up to the top side, and just on one, because I was reading this is kind of a, I don't know, it's on a there's a guy who does a YouTube series called Way of Ramen, and this is how he said to do it. Oh, okay.
Great job. Great job.
Yep, there it is. We got a crack. Oh well, not perfect. So far, so good, though. Thanks. Peeling. It's almost as exciting as watching paint dry. Okay. And other than that one crack, I mean, looks pretty good. So I'm happy. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, so the eggs are ready. Now we can finish up the seasoning for this. Just mix that up a little bit. Recipe calls for a tablespoon of garlic. I like it a little bit heavier on the garlic, so I got 4 fat cloves, and I'm just using this little ceramic garlic grater. It comes with this nifty little brush in order to kind of get everything out of there. It works really, really nice. You just got to be careful because you could potentially tear up your fingers pretty easily. So I'm just trying to be a little bit careful in doing this. This works super, super well for ginger, which is always kind of a pain. And last one. Okay. It's looking good. Gotta love that garlic. Okay. I have one of those hinged garlic hand press things, but I don't really like it. That looks a lot better. You know, I have that kind of garlic press that you're talking about. It was in here. Oh, there it is. This one is made by Kun. What's nice about it is this little bit actually comes out, and so you're able to scrape it on both sides. It can be a little bit of a pain to clean. So like right afterwards, it's, you know, rinse it out and kind of work it so then that way it stays clean. But it's got a nice lever mechanism, and I don't use it a ton. It depends on how much garlic I'm needing to kind of press. If I'm doing a lot, then sure. But for like 4 cloves, like this little grating plate is perfect. So there's a place for each of them. It's just whether or not you can justify having the extra thing, if you have the space, if you have the need. It all depends. So let's add this garlic all up in here. That is just the one downside of this, I will say, is the fact that you really kind of have to, you've got to have that little brush in order to get everything out of there. So it's a little bit of a pain, but I want to go make sure I rinse this, because if not, it's gonna really suck to clean. So since that's all rinsed, we're good to go there. Okay. We'll finish mixing this up initially. And then we can move on to assembly. Alright, that's looking good. We'll move that off to the side for a bit. And we will also scoot this over. Although, you know what? Since all of that stuff is going in at basically the same time, I can put this stuff away. Yes? I'm sorry, what was the question? Let's see. Yes, garlic oil is gnarly when it dries out. Yeah, garlic oil can be really, really gnarly. The little bits of leftover garlic just get on there and are just super, super stuck, and you have to soak it, and it just becomes a complete and utter pain. So if you can avoid it, I would highly recommend it. A little bit of cleanup goes a long way. Okay. Let's see. The one last thing that I really should prep before we get going, and it's a completely optional ingredient, is the shredded cheese that's going to go on top. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, like, Korea loves to put cheese on tons and tons of things. And this is kind of no different. More often than not, the cheese that you're going to find in Korea specifically is going to be a mild white cheese. They do have like American cheese slices that'll get used, but it'll be like a mozzarella or even like a mild provolone, something to that effect that gets used super often. Mostly the mozzarella though, because of the stretch. You see the stretch everywhere. I mean, like I said, I watch a lot of Korean food videos, a lot of street videos, and it's, yeah, they're just all about it. So I need a half cup of the cheese, and thankfully I've got a nice big grater, which will make quick work of this. And I just got a block of low moisture mozzarella. Use what you like. But yeah, got this giant grater. I got, I don't know, a few years ago when I was messing around with biscuits, and I wanted a nice big grater for grating the butter to go into the biscuits. Now this has been out for a little bit, so it's like especially soft. But we don't need a ton. We only need about a half cup or so. And that's looking good. We'll pull off some of these little stringy bits since it'll be melting into it anyways. It's gonna work just fine. Okay, so that's good. Let's get this put away. Want to get this rinsed real quick, so then that way, like I said, it just cleans up easier. Okay, that is looking real good. All right, cheese be ready. Move this over. There we go. And since we're here, they'll hydrate. All right. Okay. So now we need to assemble kind of the soup that everything goes into, and it simmers until the tteokbokki are really kind of nice and soft. They'll be really soft, but they'll have a nice chew to them. It's a really fantastic texture. So for this, we're going to use 6 cups of water, which I've got here. And most of the time when you see it on the street, water is the base that's used. Just because it's cheaper, it's quicker, and that's generally, like I said, in most of the videos that I've seen, of these street vendors and they film them making it from scratch. It's really kind of an ASMR sort of thing. It's just ambient noises. It's not a whole lot of talking, but it's just water, and then they kind of add in their seasonings and call it good. There really isn't anything else. However, what you can do in order to elevate it and amplify it is make ahead of time sort of the anchovy stock that's super common in Korean cuisine, or a Japanese dashi will work. If you have like a chicken broth or something, that will work just fine. In this particular instance, I'm going to do a mix of two things. I'm going to use a little bit of hondashi, which is the Japanese kind of instant dashi. I keep it around for things like this brown granule. I just happen to have it in an airtight container. Normally comes in a box or a packet. But the basic recipe for this is going to be 1 teaspoon per cup. And since I want it to flavor half of it, I'm going to do 3 teaspoons. And then the other half, I'm going to go with, and this is a vegetarian option, is this mushroom bouillon powder from Lee Kum Kee. And their recipe is 2 teaspoons per cup. So what's nice is that it's, you know, it's going to mix it up, and it's just going to add a really nice depth of flavor to the whole thing. So let's go ahead and get this on and bring it up to a boil. Now this mushroom powder and the dashi, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in them, flavor compound wise. Previously we've talked about like MSG and what that does and how it kind of helps elevate the perceived savoriness. Well, in doing reading and research as I do, come to find out there's actually a pair of complementary, they're ribonucleotides, I believe is what they are. It's commonly called LNG because there's 2 of them. And the presence of those 2 plus MSG together actually work synergistically in order to really amplify the perceived savoriness. In fact, if you happen to have both of them in a 1-to-1 kind of proportion, the perceived effect is 8 times greater than just MSG or just the LNG. And so with that in mind, what that means is that the amount of salt that gets added to whatever it is that you're making, if you're using those or they're present in the ingredients, you actually have to add less. So there's a whole lot going on in there that I want to kind of get down and really hammer down what I want to do with it, and then that way we can talk more at length, and then that way, you know, I can actually present an actual recipe and talk about things. But that's one of the things that's happening. Like shiitake mushrooms, for instance, yes, it's got that naturally occurring those glutamates, but it also happens to have those naturally occurring the LNG. So yeah, like I said, there's a whole bunch going on, and I'm kind of excited by it just because it's a really cool thing, and it's something that I'm kind of messing with. And since we're waiting for this to come to a boil, I'm gonna drain the tteokbokki real quick, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about some ideas that I had, and I want some feedback from you guys. Okay. So, and kind of thinking about this stream and what I want to do with it and some of my goals and plans and everything, one of the ideas that I had in conversation with some people was to do a, like, once a month, a new to me recipe. Specifically something that, like, I've either never heard of or I've never made myself. And then, like, say on Wednesday would be recipe research day, kind of figuring out, okay, this is what some of the most popular recipes for this particular dish look like, and then putting together a recipe, and then come Saturday, we actually make it. And so I thought that could be really interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that I've either never heard of or I've never made. And so I thought it would be kind of a fun chance to do something new and different. One of the other ideas was to kind of, like, say, you know, on a Monday or Wednesday, kind of when I do the dinner streams, to not really have a plan, but literally just be like, okay, well, what's in the fridge? And literally figure it out on the fly. Then that way, what it would do is it kind of give all y'all a window into my way of thinking when it comes to food, and like, okay, well, what can I do with these leftovers? Because everybody ends up with leftovers, and sometimes you just don't want to eat the exact same leftovers repeatedly. Sometimes you want to change it up a little bit. So that's something that I'm thinking I'd like to do. So I'm just curious what everybody thinks. Like, oh yeah, it's a great idea, or no, it sucks. Okay, cool. Thanks, Sleepy Dragon. Yeah, and to be honest, like, I'm like, if anybody's got any other ideas of like, hey, you know what would be cool is if you did this or whatever, head on over to the Discord. Let's see. Oh, nope. It would help if I'm actually in the chat box. Yeah, if you head over to the Discord and then drop whatever ideas over there, then that way I've got them written down and I can kind of look at them. I know earlier this week in one of the chats that goes on, I guess some people were talking about how fried chicken is something that I should make. And so I'm down to clown. Fried chicken is one of my most favoritist things ever. So I would be happy to do that at some point. So, yeah. Actually, I should probably get a stirring spoon for this. I think Mrs. Wazo's asleep. I just walked back there and it looked like she was taking a nap. That's okay. Alright.
The cheese soup was amazing.
Oh, is that what you had today? Mm-hmm. What's the flame looking like? Just wondering if I'm getting towards the end of this canister. Yeah, it's kind of what it's looking like. I'm like, why is it taking so long? Really do need to get one of those induction burners for stuff like this. There we go. Much better. We can get that out of the way. So at this point, really the plan is once it comes up to a boil, I'm going to pull out a little bit of it to mix up the sauce, and then we'll put the tteokbokki in and the sauce, and it just needs to simmer basically until the tteokbokki get kind of nice and soft. Then we're going to add in the cabbage, the onions, the scallions, the fish cake, and then let it go for about another 5-10 minutes, really, depending on what the texture of everything is like. But they need a little bit of time to kind of pick up the flavor and everything. And then we'll add in the ramen noodles. Now, I happen to have here, which is kind of cool, found them at one of the Korean markets that I go to. It's packet of just plain noodles. So it doesn't have any soup packets or anything like that. It's just the plain noodles, which is kind of cool. But if you've got a ramen pack that you're a fan of, then by all means, use that. And then just hang on to the soup packets if you want. Yeah, the otogi noodles are pretty good. The paldo ones, I'm a big fan of. Those are usually in the Shin Ramyun or the Shin Ramyun Black. Either one of those is great. So let's get a bigger spoon. All right, since this is now up at that boil, a couple of spoonfuls in. Smelling really good. Okay. I'm just mixing it up so then that way it's a little bit easier to add to it. It is looking good. Okay. There we go. Excellent. Okay. Tteokbokki in. Now we just gotta let it come back up to a boil. Let's see. A year ago I got into the Indomie mi goreng. Yeah, the Indomie mi goreng instant noodles those are really good ones. And let's see. One of the best things is set aside the oils and the flavor, do something custom with the noodles. Then you have double oil and season for another package. Yeah, absolutely. That's that's something that I'll do periodically, is to change it up. Not necessarily, like if I have, say, some leftover stock or something like that, I will use that and maybe use, forego a packet, depending on kind of how I'm feeling. There is, I know at least in Korean social media, and this is a while ago, that there was a really popular kind of recipe that was going around that had gone viral, and it involved using this one particular ramyun packet that was like really fiery. And what they would say is like, use that, make the soup, but only use half the noodles, and then get some of that sundubu tofu and mix it in, and the flavor is really similar to a sundubu jjigae. And the Korean student that we had living with us at the time, once I was able to actually find those particular ramyun packets, like he was all over that, and he just absolutely loved it. And oh my gosh, that particular packet was really spicy. I can do a bit of heat these days. I can't do a ton of heat, just because of age and everything. It just wrecks me. Even with like antacids or anything like that, it can just get it can be no bueno. So yeah, not really sure what I'm going to do for dinner tomorrow now that I think about it. I think after all this is done, I don't know if you can hear it, but Mrs. Wayso is definitely asleep. I can hear her snoring. That's okay. She's been working real hard recently and has had some crazy deadlines at work and things like that, and so her sleep is a very precious thing. And so whenever she falls asleep and takes a nap, I just leave her alone, so then that way she can kind of catch up on it. So that's just kind of what I do. But yeah, thankfully with this particular recipe, it's gonna be really kind of nice and soupy because we've got all this stuff that still has to go in there. I mean, it looks like there's a ton of liquid, but once we add everything else into it, it's gonna fill up the space really nicely. And this is only really one way to make it. To be honest, in probably the oldest version of the recipe. It was stir-fried with some totally different ingredients. I've seen recipes where they will kind of do a drier version with just the seasoning, and then it becomes just kind of a almost like a bar snack or something like that. I think soaking has done some good. I'm seeing fractures on these. It's like these are getting... Oh wow. Yeah, they've gotten super soft real quick. Here I was thinking they were going to have to simmer for an excessively long time, but that does not appear to be the case, because these are all floating on the top, which is really what you want. So that being said, let's add our soft-boiled eggs. We'll add... Everything else just goes in. Just want to be careful of those eggs. I like to not break them if possible. Because the cabbage should be nice and soft and pretty easy to consume. Alright, so my eggs are there. Just want to make sure that everything is submerged nicely. I love tteokbokki, so this makes me happy. Alright. Let's grab a timer. Hey there. Okay, that's going. Another thing that'd be really good to go along with this is some rice. I didn't make any just because I figured with the rice cakes and everything there'll be kind of enough rice type stuff to go around. But a bowl of rice is always a welcome side to go with this. Also kind of cool about it is really you can kind of mix it up and do whatever you want. So if you wanted to throw in some like bean sprouts, if you wanted to kind of throw in anything you want, you really can. This is pretty gosh darn traditional and kind of what you'll find. The only thing that I would say would probably be a little bit different is they would have a lot more of the gochujang added, that paste, and then the broth would end up being definitely thicker, but it would also, you know, be kind of this bright red, because I just love it like that. So yeah, if you ever have a chance to go to Korea, I mean, you're gonna see this everywhere and be like, oh yeah, that white dude made it. This fish cake is actually really good. I was kind of surprised. It was one of those things that the first time I made it as a banchan or as a side, I did it when we had that Korean student living here with us, and I kind of felt like, hey, you know what, let's make, you know, a taste of home for him. And so I picked it up at the market and, you know, made it according to a recipe that I found online. And I was really surprised at how much I really liked it. It doesn't have, I would say, a super fishy flavor to it. I mean, it is fish. You will taste fish, but it's not super overpowering, which is really, really nice, especially when it's sauteed up, like with some onions and some bell pepper, and finished with a little like sesame oil. Now, if you notice, I haven't like added any oil to this. I haven't added anything like that. So in terms of fat content, it's actually going to be pretty low. So if you're, you know, watching your metrics. Let's see. You've been developing a tolerance to spicy lately. Been putting ghost pepper into everything. Really? You are brave. Small amounts for now, but sometimes you go heavy. Yeah. At this point in time, I can't I can't really do that much. Like even with some of the hotter bravado spices, like I have to be really, really careful. Like I'll add like literally a drop kind of thing, and that'll be enough because it gets me to a comfortable heat level where I get, you know, a little bit of burn, some warmth going on, which is what I like, and doesn't make me regret life. I'm not into that level of pain anymore. I used to be, but nope, can't do it no more. Alright, that is progressing really nicely, actually. I will say that it looks like some of the rice cakes. I found one over here that looks like it's kind of exploded a little bit. That's okay, it's still gonna taste good. So, about 4 minutes, we'll add the noodles. And then it'll be ready. And in the meantime, I think I'm gonna get myself a bowls for sampling. And we'll grab the panda chopsticks. Because pandas. Three pounds of orange chicken, usually half a ghost pepper in the sauce, but sometimes I use 2 whole peppers and it hurts, but it's so good. Oh yeah. I think we've talked about this, your recipe for the orange chicken. Yeah, I can see how it would be, you know, have a really good burn to it and just make you real happy inside. So that's cool. You also use a lot of honey and brown sugar to mask the spice. Yeah, the sugar definitely helps with that perceived heat, but what it'll also do is delay the hit. So like, oh yeah, you'll get like that sweet, and then once the sweet goes away, that's when the capsaicin just comes in and just hits you for all it's worth. Yeah. Ooh, that's bubbling nicely. It is looking super good. It's smelling real good. In fact, part of me is wondering if it even needs the full 10 because scallions are nice and soft. The cakes are looking good. Cabbage is wilted nicely. Kind of thinking we can knock 2 minutes off the clock on that. So that being the case, let's drop that in. There we go. And then that way we'll have some nice noodles to go with this. I'm just stirring them up in order to get them to break up and be a little bit easier to work with. This is also thickened up, which is nice. I mean, it's still pretty soupy, but you can see like with the bubbles, they're actually sticking around a little bit. Like some of the starch from the rice cakes and everything have gone into the actual soup itself and kind of thickened it a bit. Same with that gochujang. It's just kind of helped thicken it, and the heat just really activates that starch. That is softening up really nice. There we go. Last thing I want is to have it stick. Or as our Korean student would say, nice. That's coming along real well. I think those are just about done. I think we can call that good. And cheese. We're looking good. That is tteokbokki. Well, soupy variety at least. So I want to try the soup real quick. That's good. That's really good. It's got a little bit of a burn to it, but since it's not really meant to be straight up drunk, I think we'll be good. Plus, it's nice and it's got kind of that thickening action going on. So let's just grab some noodles, some of the cake. Let's find. Oh yeah, that tteokbokki got super soft. A little bit of the cheese. Let's see. Let's grab.
Chris Carnage official just showed up.
Oh snap! Hey, Chris Carnage, welcome. How are you doing today? Ta-da! Got my egg. All right. Let's tuck into that tteokbokki itself. Oh man, that's tasty. How you doing today, Chris? Ooh, yeah. Just a little bit of a warmth going on there, but not like super bad. At work on break, huh? I'm doing good. I'm enjoying this Korean street food classic, tteokbokki, which is really nice. It's got a little bit of a burn to it, but it's not overpowering at all. It's just some nice background warmth. Let's try these noodles with some of that cheese on it. Oh, that's good. That's real good. The cheese actually helps with a little bit of the warmth, but it's super creamy. And, oh man, that's super good. Get some of that fish cake going on. Real nice. Man, tteokbokki is so good. Like seriously, those rice cakes, when they're nice and soft, are just real nice. Sometimes they'll serve it at Korean barbecue, like if you go out to a restaurant, and not just like kind of in this form, but they'll bring it out for you to grill, and grilled up, it's really nice. In fact, one of the things that you can do with them, and it's pretty common, is if you take a couple of the tteokbokki and you were to say take some string cheese and cut a couple of the sticks in half and then line them up on a skewer and then do them on a grill pan. And that's another really common thing to find, is those grilled tteokbokki with cheese. And then they'll usually put a little bit of a sauce or something on it. Okay, let's try this egg. Good egg. And that yolk, even though it's done, if you notice it doesn't have that gray ring. That egg is tasty. I should have made extra. But I'm going to have to dish some of this up for Mrs. Wayso. That is super good. Hey, Nick. Welcome, welcome. Yeah. The Gochujang and the Gochujang, super bright red. Really beautiful color. Let's get to see. Hopefully it'll fix its focus. Come on. Anyways, yeah. But this soup thickened up really nice because of the rice cakes. And it, oh yeah, let's move that. There we go. It, it's got a good flavor to it. Adding that combination of the dashi and the mushroom powder, like, really kicked up the flavor. Well, I think what it was is because I was holding it like this for so long, it was just like, oh, I should focus on that. But the camera's not very smart. And so it's not. That's okay. Because this camera is much smarter. That scallion's tasty. So yeah. Hey, Night's On, welcome, welcome. That is tteokbokki, folks. That is what we got going on. Kind of a short one today, to be honest. But thankfully, I mean, like you saw, other than a couple of specialty ingredients, it's super easy. It comes together really easy. If you wanted to use, if you don't have Korean soy sauce, which, unless you do a lot of Korean cooking, it makes sense that you wouldn't have it. I would use the Japanese soy sauce as a substitute. You know, just kind of whatever you have, like, you know, the Kikkoman or whatever. You don't necessarily need to use anything super crazy. Oh, hey, Chris, thanks for popping in, man. Have yourself a good one. Excuse me. Have yourself a good one. I'll have to catch you next time you're on. But, yeah, if you ever have any questions about anything, like, I'll do, like, culinary tech support. Like, I actually did it for Grant from Unleash the Archers this past week to help him figure out sous vide without an immersion circulator. But, yeah, hit me up on the Discord, which... I can type with one hand. There we go. Yeah, hit me up on the Discord with any questions that you might have. And I'm more than happy to kind of work through whatever issues that you might be having. So, guys, thank you so much for coming in today. Those noodles with that cheese, so dang good. Yeah. Definitely give this a shot. It's super good. Oh man, that's tasty stuff. Anyways, thanks so much for coming today, guys. I will catch you all on Monday for kind of the normal Monday night dinner stream. No clue what I'm making just yet, but once I figure that out, I'll put it up on the Discord like I did for the recipe. If you guys have any requests for anything, definitely post them in there. There's a thread for like food recommendations and things like that. So I'm down to clown for something new or something I haven't made. If there's anything that you're like, oh, hey, you know, what do you do for X? Again, hit me up. The Discord honestly is going to be the best way. And then we'll make it happen. So let's see. Curious who is on right now. Let's see. See if it'll actually like let me raid correctly this time. See if everybody's playing Elden Ring. Seems to be what like literally everybody's been doing recently is playing that Elden Ring. Let's see. It looks like, oh, you know what? It looks like Rav is on. So why don't we, let's see what Rav is up to real quick. Looks like he's doing some recording. And yeah. Okay, yeah, let's go raid Rav. Rav's good people. We like Rav. So let's see. Yeah, Elden Ring is so hot right now. Let's see. Let's hit that. See if it. Scroll down. There we go. Okay. So I will send you guys off to Rav. Have yourself a wonderful day. Love you guys. Thank you so much for coming. And I'll see you all Monday. Take care, folks.
Hello, boys and ghouls. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be?